On today's episode, our Toughest Mudder West preview with Deanna Brasz.
This is the world's toughest podcast. Welcome to the world's toughest podcast, where we talk about any obstacle course race you'd like, as long as that's world's toughest mudder. Each week we talk to members of the WTM community and share stories of success and failure in the single greatest event in OCR. My name is Will Hicks, and this is the world's toughest podcast.
Welcome back to World's Toughest Podcast. Thank you for listening. You are listening to the number one rated OCR podcast, and that is because of listeners like you. Thank you. If you'd like to be a part of the celebration, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. Today on our show, Deanna Brasz. Deanna was one of the top women in the Tougher Mudder series last year with 10 finishes, 7 podiums, and 4 first-place finishes. She will be running Toughest Mudder West this weekend, along with myself and many of you. We're going to talk about the course, the obstacles, and share some tips for the whole event. Also, before Deanna and I talk, we are going to break down the elite field and tell you who we expect to see out there. Before we start, you can email me at willhicks@gmail.com. You can find me on Twitter at @TheWillHicks or on Instagram at WillHicks and on Facebook at facebook.com/worldstoughestpod. We're going to be rolling out some new social feeds in the next week. I will let you know about those soon. If you would like to be a part of the show, you can leave a review for the show on Apple Podcasts, and I will read it on a future episode. Also, big news, we announced it on our last episode 3 days ago. This year we are partnering with Merrell again to give away free Merrell trail running shoes to listeners of the World's Toughest Podcast. We are going to give away thousands of dollars of Merrell footwear in 2018. You can win a free pair of the Merrell Agility Peak Flex 2 E-Mesh or the All Out Crush 2. There are 2 versions of the All Out Crush 2. You can get it in Tough Mudder colors, the orange and black, or a couple other colors with regular shoelaces. I have the Boa Lace version, the Tough Mudder version, and they are great. Scott Cole bought a pair of the All Out Crush 2s and posted a picture of them on Facebook this week. And his buddy Scott Sebastian posted, "In my best Will Hicks voice, and they are great." And I saw that, and so I jumped in and said, "Is that a thing? Do I say that?" And Scott Sebastian said, "You say that when describing your love of the Agility Peak Flex shoe. Maybe you said it once or twice, but it's stuck in my head." And that might be true. I do like my Agility Peak Flex shoes. And I do like catchphrases. They are great. If you'd like to qualify to win a free pair of trail running shoes from Merrell, text the word TOUGH to the number 22828. That's TOUGH to the number 22828. Or you can sign up via email by emailing worldstoughestpodcast@gmail.com with the word Merrell in the subject line. And 3 things in the body of the email: your name, your email address, and your phone number. That will sign you up for our World's Toughest newsletter and qualify you to win. All those directions are also in the show notes if you'd rather read them than rewind 15 seconds. Let's talk about Toughest Mudder West. Toughest Mudder is an 8-hour race held on a 5-mile looped course. The man and woman who complete the most laps in the 8 hours win. The top 5 men and top 5 women will qualify as elite contenders for World's Toughest Mudder 2018. Each man who completes 30 miles and each woman who completes 25 miles will qualify as a contender for World's Toughest Mudder. Like last year, anyone is welcome to sign up for World's Toughest Mudder and run and compete, but to qualify for prize money, you must qualify as a contender at minimum at a Toughest Mudder. Pricing is as follows. First place man, first place woman, $5,000. Second place, $2,000. Third place, $1,000. Fourth place, $500. Fifth place, $250. Last year, there was a bonus prize for the man and or woman who won first place if they also ran 50 miles. Team HQ has not announced any bonus prizes for 2018 yet, but I can't see them taking that off the table. I just think they haven't made it official yet or announced it. Other awards available include a 25-mile patch for completing 25 miles, a 50-mile patch, and a free entry to World's Toughest Mudder for completing 50 miles, a green bib and free Tough Mudder entry for the man and woman who run the fastest first lap, the sprint lap, and a black 8-hour finisher headband for all runners who complete the whole 8 hours. Let's talk about the weather. Overcast with showers at times, low near 40 degrees Fahrenheit, about 4 Celsius, winds south-southwest at 5 to 10 miles per hour. Chance of rain, 40%. Humidity, 90%. Holy buckets, guys. There is going to be a full moon the night before the race, so the moon should be bright, but if it's overcast, it won't matter how bright the moon is. So it'll either be really dark or really light or somewhere in the middle. That's good analysis right there, guys. The rest of it, 40 degrees, windy, 90% humidity, good chance of rain. Guys, conditions are going to be terrible, which will make this a great event. Do not miss it. The best stories come from the worst circumstances. It will be the worst while it's happening, but you will tell the stories for the rest of your life. Think about the last year of your life. How many of those 365 days do you have an amazing story for? A story you will tell your kids or someone will tell at your funeral about you. 2, maybe 3 stories, if you're lucky, from the last year. Days and experiences like the one we're going to have at Toughest Mudder West are rare and few and far between. So don't miss it. Let's talk about the elite athletes. I've talked with most of the top Tough Mudder athletes over the last few weeks. Not all of them. If I did not connect with you, I apologize. Shoot me an email, and I will make sure to give you a call next time. willhicks@gmail.com. We've already talked about the prizing. Let's talk about who is going to compete for it. Here are some of the elite men who will be competing at Toughest Mudder West. Ryan Atkins, Tyler Nash, Kris Mendoza, and Glenn Racz will all be there. Ryan won this race last year with an epic come-from-behind win against Chad Trammell. Until someone else beats him, I will die before I bet against Ryan Atkins. Tyler Nash told me he is feeling dangerously healthy. Tyler was one of a handful of men last year to hit 50 miles at a Toughest Mudder. Tyler got his in Chicago, though, not L.A. L.A. is one of the most difficult courses of the year. Kris Mendoza. Kris ran 100 miles at World's Toughest 2016. He ran this race last year, Toughest Mudder West, at a different venue and finished just off the podium. Kris lives locally, so this will be a hometown race for him. And Glenn Racz. Glenn ran this race last year also, and he finished 3rd. He was the highest finishing man at Toughest Mudder West last year that did not hit 50 miles. For the women, Lindsay Webster, Rea Kolbl, Allison Tai, Morgan Mckay, Alex Chikorita Rodania, Deanna Brasz, and Adrian Alvord will all be there at Toughest Mudder West. I want to talk about the women for a minute. They are going to be so interesting to watch, and here's why. Last year, Lindsay Webster, Allison Tai, went head-to-head at Toughest Mudder 3 times. Lindsay won every time. Allison ended up winning the series title, though, because she did well in races that Lindsay was not at. And Allison finished in second place at World's Toughest Mudder, ahead of Lindsay's sixth place. So how will that all shake out this year at Toughest Mudder? Lindsay versus Allison. Now that would already make Toughest Mudder West a great race. But guess who else will be there? Your women's World's Toughest Mudder champion, Rea Kolbl. Rea won the sprint at World's Toughest last year and the whole race, which has never happened before. We know she's fast. But Rea did not run any Toughest Mudders last year. This weekend will be Rea Kolbl's first Toughest Mudder ever. So how will Rea versus Lindsay versus Allison shake out? I cannot wait to see. I already told you I am not betting against Ryan. Don't bet against the champ. But who's the champ here? Rea won World's Toughest. Allison won the Toughest Series. And Lindsay won Toughest Mudder West last year. There's not room on the top step of the podium for all three of them. Well, there probably is. It's a big step, but that's not going to happen. The women's race is going to be great. Morgan Mckay will also be there. Morgan is going to be another wild card. She won a 24-hour race at the end of last year. But unfortunately, it was not World's Toughest Mudder. It was Spartan's Ultrabeast Championship in Iceland. Morgan got a concussion at World's Toughest and had to take a medical DQ. Morgan tends to perform better as the race gets longer, meaning she has more of an advantage in a 24-hour race versus an 8-hour race. But if you check out her social feed, she has been training like crazy, and she's newly engaged. So I know how I got married, and I know what my wife was like when it was time to get in that wedding dress. So, and I mean this with all respect. When I got married, my wife looked amazing, and I just looked like a schlub in a tux. So I just said, don't bet against the champ. Morgan's got a fat championship belt buckle or wooden block or whatever Spartan's giving away these days from her Iceland win. If Morgan ends up winning the whole thing this weekend, I wouldn't be surprised at all. You've also got Adrienne Alvord. We talked to Adrienne a few episodes ago. She is our elite/horse trainer. I expect her to finish in the top 5 or close to it. If she doesn't hit top 5 in LA, she'll hit it at another race later in the year. Chikorita will be at Toughest Mudder West. She finished tied for 5th place last year at Toughest Mudder West with April D. Hartwig. So it'll be interesting to see how Chikorita does this year. Chikorita did very well at the 8-hour races over the year. She was kind of one of the new to Tough Mudder faces that we saw come out through the Toughest Mudder races. And then Deanna Brasz. We're going to talk with Deanna in a few minutes. Deanna specializes in the 10-mile tougher mudder races, but she enjoys Toughest Mudder, so she runs them also. Here's Deanna's problem, and we'll talk about this in a few minutes in the interview. She runs tougher in the morning, on Saturday morning. That's her race. That's her jam. But because she runs that hard on Saturday morning, she's not 100% for Toughest Mudder on Saturday night. Tougher Mudder is definitely costing her at least 5 miles at Toughest Mudder, and maybe more, maybe 10 miles. But she knows that, and she's okay with that. So, well done, Deanna. Here are some of the elites who will not be at Toughest Mudder West this weekend. Robert Killian. Saturday is Robert's birthday, and he's going to spend it with his family. Happy birthday, Robert. He does plan to run in at least 2 other Toughest Mudders, though. Miguel Medina has other commitments this weekend. Last year, Miguel laid low until the last toughest of the year and snuck in and finished top 5. He didn't say this to me, but I wonder if he might do that again this year. Casey Northup, she will compete this year, but LA doesn't play to her strengths. She's planning on a different toughest right now. Kayla Coblin will possibly be there pitting, but not competing. Luke Skyrunner Bosick has scheduling conflicts. He will not be there. Stephanie Bishop is still recovering from an injury at World's Toughest Mudder. And Trevor Psychos will not be there. He has a foot injury that's healing up. Trevor and Stephanie are linked in my mind. They're not really. There's nothing really to link them, except I always think of them in the same breath. They were the 2016 men's and women's World's Toughest Mudder champions. They were also both at Toughest Mudder West last year, but did not compete due to injury. I doubt they'll be on site this year, but like last year, they both have injuries, and they both can't compete at Toughest Mudder West. Get well, you two. Amelia Boone will not be there. She's not running any obstacle course races until May. Evan Perperis will not. His first toughest is going to be in the UK in May. Yancey Culp will not be there. He's running Toughest South in Texas. Yancey lives in Texas. Ryan Woods will not be there. He's traveling. Mark Jones will not be there. He has other commitments. And Michelle Ford will not be there. It's too early in the season for her. She will compete, but not at LA. There are others I wasn't able to connect with, or they didn't want to publicly say if they'd be there, maybe to keep their competition on their toes. Either way, I expect some names I did not mention to show up. And you know what? Maybe we'll probably get someone who we've never even heard of that shows up. Last year, Zoe Chazen came out of nowhere, finished on the podium twice. Or we might get someone like that who we've never... Sean Stevens-Whale showed up in Canada. I never heard of the guy. He's like a world-famous stair runner, shows up at Toughest Mudder Canada, and finishes in third place. So maybe there's a Spartan or two that wants to see what all the fuss is about, and they make the leap over to Toughest Mudder. I cannot wait to see how the elite competitive side of the race plays out. Before we talk with Deanna Brasz, I mentioned earlier I would love to hear from you. I mean that. Reviews on Apple Podcasts are the best. If you've already done that, shoot me an email or find me on Twitter or Instagram. Facebook.com/World's Toughest Pod is good also. I've struck up a few friendships with listeners just from them telling me what they thought of an episode or something that made them laugh, or this has happened several times. People say, hey, did you hear about this? And they shoot me a link to some news article, Tough Mudder or OCR related. And many times, no, I had no idea. I didn't hear about that. I love it when you send me tips like that. Ian K. just sent me the article John Albin wrote about his experience at World's Toughest this year. That's great, and I hadn't seen it yet. You can find a link on our Facebook page to that story. If you go back and listen to the first few episodes of the podcast, they're kind of painful. Not because of the guests. They're great, but I had no idea what I was doing. The show has evolved and changed a lot since those first few episodes with Sharkbait and Maddie Gregg. The only difference between those first episodes and the current ones are the experience I've gained and the relationship with listeners like you. So, thank you. I appreciate it. Speaking of, Eric Jins sent me a message on Facebook. Facebook.com/World's Toughest Pod. Last episode, I said Ryan Atkins was the LeBron James of obstacle course racing. But really, LeBron is the Ryan Atkins of the NBA. Eric wrote me, Will, I just listened to the new podcast. Great work, but I disagree about the LeBron comparison. Unlike LeBron, Ryan never throws a fit or complains about a call. Keep up the good work. Thank you, Eric. That's pretty funny. I can't really speak to LeBron. I've never met LeBron James. I met Magic once. You want to hear that story? I was in an elevator at Staples Center, and Magic Johnson got in. Look, I didn't say it was a good story. They can't all be winners. Anyway, I never met LeBron, but I met Ryan. Ryan is unquestionably the best man in the world at endurance obstacle course racing. Robert Killian is close. John Albin is close. Chad Trammell, Trevor Psychos are close. But Ryan has never lost to any of them at a race 8 hours or longer. I'm not blowing smoke. Ryan will never hear this. Some of the elites listen. Some of them leave reviews.
5 stars.
But I don't think Ryan listens regularly. Have you ever met someone who is the absolute best at their job? I mean, the best in the world. Like, you might know someone who's a really good investor, but are they Warren Buffett? You might know someone who's really kind, but are they Mother Teresa? You might know someone who takes a lot of selfies, but are they Jim Campbell? Ryan is the best at what he does, and what he does is run punishing races and win them every single time. And I promise you, test me on this. This weekend in LA, when Ryan passes you on the course, and he will pass you on the course, say hi to him. If he doesn't say hi or good work or keep it up, you guys, I will devote an episode of the show to Spartan race. No, I won't. Because this is his job, and I don't want hundreds of people bugging him on course when he's trying to win a race to provide for his family. The Atkins need to eat. But Eric's right. Ryan is a class guy, a credit to our sport. If you'd like to be a part of the show, you can leave a review on Apple Podcasts. Just open the Purple Podcast app and search for Tough Mudder. We're the first one that pops up. Click our logo and then scroll down and click on Write a Review. I will read it on a future episode. You can leave a review on your computer through iTunes also. Just search Tough Mudder in the iTunes store and scroll down to our logo. Click our logo, click Ratings and Reviews, and click Write a Review. I would appreciate it. Deanna Brasz has done more Tougher Mudders than almost anyone. She has more Tougher podiums and more wins than any other woman. She will be running Toughest Mudder West this weekend. It's time to talk with Deanna Brasz. Let's go to the phones.
Deanna Brasz, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me.
Deanna, tell me about your first World's Toughest Mudder.
Oh, my first World's Toughest. That was just this past one, and it was absolutely amazing. I just had the most incredible time out there, and yeah, it was such a great experience.
You got 65 miles, which is pretty good for your first year. How did you get that many miles?
I just kept moving. I had to take a lot of penalties, but I made sure I kept moving as fast as I could, didn't spend a lot of time in the pit. And yeah, that's pretty much the only thing. Just keep going.
What did you think of the obstacles out there?
They were hard, but I knew it was going to be more difficult. I couldn't get like any of the grip ones pretty much the whole time, but that's okay.
What did you think of Kong Infinity?
Oh, that one was so much fun. I actually did manage to get that one a few times. So that one, I love that new concept. It's going to be a great addition to the courses this year.
This was the last year in Las Vegas, and so it was your first and last chance to do the cliff. How'd that go for you?
I actually did not jump off the cliff.
It's scary.
It's terrible, I know, but I knew. So my goal going in was 75 miles. And by the time the cliff opened, I knew I wasn't going to make that goal anyways. And it just scared me so much that I didn't jump.
Did you go to the edge and just check it out?
No, not even.
It's a very difficult obstacle. Like physically, you just step off the edge, but you're fighting everything your brain is telling you to do. Like anyway.
Yeah, and I was just so worried I'd like fall wrong and hurt myself and not be able to keep going, but I didn't even try it.
So the cliff opened at midnight. You already knew by midnight you weren't going to be able to make 75 miles. Tell me about the first 12 hours. Why? What happened in the first 12 hours to throw you off pace?
Well, I was going good until all the obstacles started to open. And then those penalties for Funky Monkey and all of those, they were so long. And my hips and knees were starting to hurt from the ups and downs and the hard ground, but it just wasn't in the cards to get 75. So I just figured I'd go out and do the best I could.
That's one thing about Vegas is that it is a very hard terrain. Like the only mud is like the mud they bring in or the mud they actually manufacture. It's rocks.
There was no mud out there at all.
So last year in 2017, you also ran a bunch of Tougher Mudders, the 10-mile competitive race, and you did pretty good. You ran 10 Tougher Mudders. You had 7 podiums, and 4 of those podiums were first-place finishes. What do you like about the 10-mile distance?
it seems like a short distance to me. You can run. I always ran them pretty easily. I never had to really push, and you just settle into a groove and keep going. I don't know. It just seemed to work for me.
You got 4 first places. How does it feel to be the fastest woman out there?
I wouldn't say I'm the fastest out there, but it felt pretty good. Just always getting up on that podium. It was a good confidence booster going into the world's toughest and everything. Because last year was my first year really doing obstacle course races at all. So it was good. What
did you do before? Like, what did you do in 2015, 2016? What's your athletic background?
So 2015, I actually 2016, I ran my first Tough Mudder, Toronto. But before that, in high school, I ran cross country and track. So I ran the 1500 and 3K for track. And then cross country was just different distances as you increased in age. And I did well enough at those that I came first a few times at our provincial championships. And I would go to nationals with my running club. And then I got an athletic scholarship. So I did that a little bit in university, but that didn't end up working out. So I've always been a runner. It's just the obstacles that are new.
So that like in the United States, it'd be the equivalent of winning state and then going to the national championships?
Yeah.
What's that like, the transition from just straight running to mixing the obstacles in? Was there any learning curve, or were you strong enough?
My first race, I was so nervous and didn't know what I was getting myself into. And I ended up failing like so many obstacles, but it actually wasn't too bad. The obstacles give it a nice break throughout the race too, because I always ran shorter distances. So 10 mile was a big jump for me, but this just broke it up a little bit with the obstacles.
So you've done a bunch of different Tough Mudders in a bunch of different cities. What's your favorite venue?
I'd have to say Toronto is my favorite because it was my first one, but they've moved the venue now. It's not at Mount St. Louis anymore, so I'll have to see.
They did the same thing to me in Southern California. My first Tough Mudder was at a place called Vail Lake, and they sold the property last year, and the new owners are like, no Tough Mudders. And so they're at a...
That's so sad.
I know. That was like my home course. Like I would, do different ones, but I always made sure to do that one every year. And yeah, I'm very disappointed. It's like someone bulldozed the house you grew up in.
They have moved the Toronto Tough Mudder, though, to a course that I used to run on for cross-country meets in a high school.
Oh, yeah?
I know the area. It's just, it won't be the same.
Yeah.
It's not a Tilly.
So this will be the first time at the new venue?
Yeah.
Toronto's got to be pretty also. Just like even if you were coming in, as not your first one, but it's got to be nice up there.
Yeah, it was at a ski resort, so pretty cool. Lots of hills. Those are always fun.
So you've specialized or at least last year, you were specializing in these tougher mudders. This next year, Tough Mudder has announced that all the Tough Mudder and tougher mudders will be 2 laps of a 5-mile course. That's a pretty big change from the 10-mile courses they've used since they've begun. How do you think that'll affect the competitive tougher mudder wave?
I'm not sure. Do you know when the first regular wave goes out?
Usually it depends if the men and women tougher go out together. Sometimes they send them all out together at like 7:45. The first regular wave usually goes out at 8 o'clock.
And
15,
then you're the second wave for tougher, you're going to end up running into all those people if they keep the times the same.
You are absolutely going to be.
Lap.
Absolutely.
So I'm interested to see how that plays out. It's going to really change things up if they don't move those start times or figure out a way around it.
I wonder if they might have dedicated lanes, on the second lap for you guys.
Mm-hmm. They might do that.
They do things like, throw ropes down for Everest and pyramid scheme. There's no hero carry for tougher mudder because it's competitive.
Although they have made us lunge through there sometimes.
Really?
Yes. I think at two of the tougher mudders I did, we had to lunge through half of hero carry.
What are some other things
And
like?
It was terrible.
Oh, I believe it. Hero carry is a long distance.
Yeah.
That's a lot of lunging. What are some of the differences between Tough Mudder and Tougher Mudder?
Well, so the main differences are, I think that they make the teamwork obstacles able to completed by themselves. So Everest and Pyramid Scheme, they both have ropes on them, which makes them a lot easier, especially Pyramid Scheme. And then for Arctic Enema, you actually have to carry a bag of ice to the obstacle and then throw that in. You still get the teamwork and camaraderie in the tougher wave. At least I've always experienced it.
In obstacles
So I don't think
like Mud Mile,
different.
for example. Yeah.
Oh yeah, they double up Mud Mile usually and Kiss of Mud.
But still, and they've been digging those Mud Mile trenches deeper, so you almost have to help each other out, unless you can jump across it. But very few people can do that.
Yeah, sometimes they have them close enough you can jump, but I usually cannot make that jump. So yeah, there's still that teamwork. It's still the Tough Mudder spirit. I always help people throughout the course, and people always help me, and that's what Tough Mudder is all about.
There was a little Tough Mudder reunion up in Canada recently. Tell me about that.
Yes, there was. That was a lot of fun. Joe Perry puts that on about twice a year at his place, and we just all get together and hang out, go for a run. In the summer, it was warm enough that we could play around on his obstacles. We got all sorts of stuff set up in his barn. But it was a little cold for that in the winter.
How long has this been going on?
This was actually his third event, third time he's done that. I didn't go to the first one, but I was at the summer one and then this past winter one.
Sounds like a good time.
It is. We drink lots and party and then run hungover.
Deanna, let's talk about Toughest Mudder. You ran 3 Toughest Mudders last year. What do you think of the 8-hour race format?
I wasn't so sure about it at first. I had never run anything like that distance. But my first 2 weren't the greatest. But Chicago, it just seemed to click, and I felt good that whole 8 hours. I just had a blast. I love it. It feels like it goes by so fast.
What do you think the difference is between obviously the time difference, but the difference between toughest and World's Toughest Mudder? How do you feel differently about those races?
Oh, that's a good question. World's Toughest was a slower pace, obviously. So you can talk to people more. You end up running into people more on course. So it's more of a community feel, even though it's also competition. And Toughest, I would help a few people, and I ran laps with some people. But everyone's paces are so different because it's such a shorter race that it's hard to find someone with the same pace as you. So it's more individual, I would say, if you're competing.
Toughest is more individual than World's Toughest?
Yes.
You mentioned the community a minute ago. What's been your experience with the community, maybe on or off the course?
Oh, I absolutely love it. I can't say enough good things about it. Like, these are some of my best friends that I've met here. And it's just great. Like, everyone supports each other through anything they're going through. Like, I struggle with depression. So if I'm having a hard time, I can just go to my friends in the community, and I know that they'll be there for me no matter what.
Do you want to talk about that? How can people in the community support you when you're struggling with that?
Well, it's just having someone to talk to. It's not, it's letting, I trust these people. So I've gone through World's Toughest with them. I've gone through Toughest Mudder. So it's not always easy to talk about depression with people that I'm not very comfortable with, but you go through these events with them. You see each other at your best and your worst. So it's like you can just tell them whatever, and they're not going to judge you. At least that's my opinion. I know some people will probably judge, but.
How do you do that the first time when you're nervous about sharing or opening up to somebody like that?
There's a lot of I second guess myself a lot. I go back and forth in my head about whether I just want to talk to them or suck it up and deal with it myself. But eventually I just have to face the fear that, because whenever I mention it, there's always that fear that it's irrational. It's an irrational fear that they're going to judge me. They're going to think less of me. But I just have to go through that every time. And I tell myself that I'm just being silly. If I talk to this person, I'm going to feel better.
Especially when we're in like not a macho sport, but a sport where when you get to the start line, everyone else looks like they have everything together. And every single one of those people at the start line is struggling with something. Maybe not the exact same thing you are or I am, but everyone has struggles. And it's really easy to forget that when you see them with their muscles and their tattoos and, anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I've shared my struggles with people and they've reached out to me in return with their problems. So it's just when you let yourself become vulnerable, it helps other people as well. So it's not just helping me. I feel like I'm helping more people.
But you're right. It's scary putting yourself out there. I mean, you're becoming very vulnerable and almost like leaving yourself, defenseless and trusting people to not take advantage of that.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Toughest Mudder this weekend. Toughest Mudder is a 5-mile looped course. Starts midnight Saturday night. It ends at 8 a.m. Sunday morning. You and I have the course map. There's 20 obstacles. Why don't we just go through the obstacles and we can talk about them, and you can kind of give some strategy for people to get through each obstacle.
Okay.
The first obstacle at Toughest Mudder West is Quagmire. What is Quagmire?
I think that's just a muddy pit with water and mud you have to climb into and then climb back out of.
I think it's just one of those ones you kind of sludge your way through. I don't think there's a real trick to it. You just kind of
there's not much to it.
Keep your shoes tight before you go in.
Yes, definitely. Make sure those are tied nice and tight.
The second obstacle is Arctic Enema.
Oh, that one. I do not like it. It's a giant tub of ice that you need to slide down into and then swim underneath the water, underneath the fence, and then climb out. And it is so cold every time.
Do you go feet first or head first under the wall?
I go feet first.
I do too, 100%. And we're the only two, I think.
That's so weird.
What do you think about having Arctic Enema so soon in the race? Second obstacle.
I think I actually think that's a good idea because you can get into it, get done with it right away, and then warm up for the rest of that lap.
So when you come out of the Arctic Enema nice and wet, the next obstacle is Mud Mile 2.0. What does Mud Mile 2.0 look like?
That is deep trenches that they dig, and you need to climb down into them and then back up this mound of slimy, muddy dirt.
Is there any real trick to it, or is it just kind of working with people to get out?
It's just basically working with people. At this point in the race, because the toughest is after the whole Saturday event, there might be little grooves in there, footholds that you can use. But it's always best to have someone there to help you just in case.
Sometimes I've gone through with one or two other guys, and we just kind of help each other up, and we kind of work through the whole obstacle together, just the three of us.
Yeah,
it's like a little mini.
Boost someone up, and then they pull up the next one, and you just make a chain and keep going.
And next lap through the obstacle, you'll probably be with two or three totally different guys, and you just kind of do the same thing again.
Yep. Everyone knows that you need to help people there.
The fourth obstacle is Devil's Beard.
That is a cargo net that they stake down, and you just need to crawl underneath it and don't get stuck. I like to go head first with my butt up and my head down, and I find that always works pretty well for me.
This is another good one if you can hit it with a few other people, where you can kind of,
definitely.
You have the two taller guys on the outside maybe, and then these shorter people kind of hunch in between them, and you kind of go through together. It's
always easier with more people. Just spread out that net.
I really don't like that obstacle. I don't know what it is about that obstacle that I know. Like my flasher will always get stuck on it, or if you have a camelback, it's a real pain. And
And it's not like it's a difficult obstacle. It's just annoying.
Yeah, it really is. Just obnoxious. Like, why is this here? I could just walk over this thing. Like, why is this? This isn't an obstacle to get through. It's like I got to make it an obstacle for me. So,
yes. You just need to fill some space.
Yeah, exactly. The next obstacle is lumberjacked. What is lumberjacked?
I think that it's like hurdles, but it's logs, and you just need to jump over them, I believe.
Yeah, you just kind of... It's like thick logs, usually, that you kind of got to get over, and they're like... At least for me, they're... they must be real high on the girls. I didn't even think about that. But for me, they're like mid-chest level.
Well, I've had it... They've been at different heights at different events I've been at. Sometimes it's been really high, like chest or neck height, and other times it's been about my waist. So it just depends on how they build it.
Do you ever have to get a boost over those, or is there any trick to getting your body over?
When I first started, I would have to get a boost because I had no upper body strength. But you just get your arms up and then pull the rest of your body and just kind of slide over it.
After lumberjacked is electroshock therapy. What do you think about electroshock therapy?
I don't hate it, but I do not love it. I went through it for my first couple events every time. I'll go through it every now and then, but I do not go through it at every event. Except now I guess we're going to have to because it's the middle of the course. What's
the trick, or how do you get through electroshock? What do you do with your hands, your head?
I just kind of run through it. Just keep moving. Hands kind of up to protect my face, but don't run too fast. Or you will, when you get shocked, you'll die and just face plant in the mud.
Not actually die, but...
No. No.
Sometimes they have hay bales set up as like a little hurdle almost in the middle of the obstacle. So you got to remember to keep your knees high so you don't trip over those.
Don't trip.
You know, it's interesting.
I've seen a lot of people losing their shoes in that at some events, actually, too.
Really? Why is that?
If the mud is thick enough, people have lost their shoes, and then they have to go back into the wires and get it out. I
would write off that shoe. I would not. Especially if it's the finisher obstacle. Like, if it's the last... I'm like, I'll get another shoe. I'm fine. I got more shoes at home. What do you think about having it on a toughest course where we're going to be doing it over and over and over again?
I'm not a fan of that because there's no way you can avoid getting shocked unless, I guess you could crawl really low, but that would take a long time every lap.
Man, you see those guys crawling through it, and, God bless them, but I don't think they're avoiding getting shocked. I think it's just they think they are.
You see them getting shocked still, just not quite as much.
Yeah, but they're in there for so long, I feel like they might be getting shocked.
Yeah.
More. Maybe there's more time between the shocks. But if it takes you 10 minutes to get through it, you're not winning.
Mm-hmm. I've never been too shocked. I've never had too bad of a shock going through it. So my method is just go fast and get it done with.
The good thing about electroshock is I can't imagine they would have it without having a penalty lap. So if
they'll definitely have a penalty there.
If someone just mentally can't get through it, or if they have metal in their body or a pacemaker or whatever.
Yeah.
They'll have an option.
And technically, I'm not supposed to go through electroshock because I've got a metal plate in one of my arms, but I still do, and I don't think it bothers me more.
How did you get a metal plate in your arm?
I shattered my humerus playing Crack the Whip while ice skating.
Oh my gosh.
So have you played Crack the Whip before?
Not ice skating, but like when I was a kid at roller skating rinks, yeah. You get like 4 or 5 kids in a line, and
we had like 20 kids in a line, and I was on the very end.
You were the whip cracky.
Yes, and I cracked, and I landed on my elbow, and there went my bone.
Oh, geez!
Completely shattered.
How old were you when that happened?
Oh, this was like maybe 5 years ago. So 19.
Yeah.
Funny.
Well, now you have superpowers in that arm. So
yes. Bionic arm.
After electroshock therapy is ladder to hell. What is ladder to hell?
This giant ladder made of slats of wood, and you just climb up it and back down. How tall would you say it is? I don't even know.
You know what? There's either 3 or 4 rungs on the ladder.
I think it's usually 4.
and it seems like there's like the distance between each rung is just enough to make your leg cramp up. So like 3 feet, 3.5. So it's probably only 12 feet maybe, but it seems like it's always at the top of a hill. So it makes it look taller when you get to it.
And then once you get to the top, there's this probably like, it's a pretty wide gap to get to the other side of the rungs to climb down.
Yeah.
You've got a gap in the middle.
How do you get across that gap at the top?
I just straddle it and get one leg over and then the next. I've never actually cramped up on this obstacle, so I find it fairly easy.
One trick.
But I know a lot of people tend to cramp on it.
I don't know what it is about. It's just, I think because your legs get used to doing a certain thing when they're running, and then all of a sudden we're requiring something totally different from them. Mm-hmm. There's a trick to getting up the ladder. If you look for where the it'll be like 3 sections of ladder with there'll be 4 large vertical posts with 3 connecting sections, and if you look where 2 of those sections come together at an angle,
it's a little bit of a smaller gap to stretch.
Well, no, it's actually, you can climb it. Like the ladder steps are closer together because there's 2x8s on top of each other. So it's not really worth waiting for if there's a line of people doing it. But if no one's there doing it, it's a good spot to kind of jump on and go over.
Yeah, I've got pretty long legs, so I haven't had a lot of problems with it. But that is a good tip if you're getting tired.
After Ladder to Hell is Pitfall.
That is another muddy obstacle. They dig a pit, fill it with water, and then within that pit area, there's holes dug out. So you're walking through, and all of a sudden you could be 4 feet deeper. Not 4 feet, like 2 feet deeper. And you have no idea where they are because there's water over top of everything.
This could be like an ankle buster one if you're not careful.
Yes.
It's basically like Quagmire. It's just like you said, like there's random holes that you're going to fall into. So.
Yeah. I always go through very slowly until I kind of figure out the path. I like to stick to the edge because there tends to be less holes there if you go to one of the sides of the pit.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I just move slow through that one and be very cautious with my footing.
I also like to watch the people in front of me and kind of use them as canaries in the coal mine. Like, oh, there's the hole.
That is a good method as well.
After Pitfall is Rope-a-Dope. This is going to be the world's toughest mudder version of Rope-a-Dope.
Okay. I wasn't sure.
At
Vegas, they had a different version than they did at Worlds for the Vegas Tough Mudder.
Yeah, Tough Mudder actually put out let me read this, what Tough Mudder said. Start off with an 8-foot broad leap out to grab and climb a 15-foot rope. Once at the top, enjoy a second transition at the top of the climb where you have to shimmy down a second angled rope. Oh, and one error has you dropping into 12 feet of water.
Okay, that is definitely the world's toughest version then.
How do you get across Rope-a-Dope?
You got to jump to the rope, try and stay out of the water because that just slows you down and everything, and climb up that rope. But if it's like Worlds, the ropes are weighted as well. So it's harder to lock your feet in because it doesn't really move.
Now, why does that weight affect the difficulty in climbing the rope? What does that do to the rope?
Well, you can't lift the rope at all with your feet to try and lock it in to pull the rope over your one foot and step on it to take some of the weight off of your arms. But if it's weighted, that's a lot harder. Like when I climb a rope, I use the S hook, and then you just kind of swing your leg around and step on it. But for the J hook, you got to actually lift up that rope, and as you're climbing, you're constantly trying to move that rope. But it's going to be a lot harder if it's weighted down in the water.
And then when you get to the top of the rope, you have to basically slide down to the end of the obstacle. Is there any trick to that?
That's not bad. Just make sure you have a good grip when you're transitioning over to it. Put your feet over and just slide your way down, hand over hand.
I was going to ask you about avoiding, tearing up your legs, but most people will be wearing wetsuits the whole time. So
yeah, it's going to be pretty cold, I think.
It's funny they say one error has you dropping into 12 feet of water, like dropping into 20 feet of water is different than 12 feet of water. It's still...
Yes, you're not going to go 12 feet under.
After rope-a-dope is Block Ness Monster.
That one's fun. Like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's these spinning blocks in water, and when you get to it, they're not spinning unless someone's got it going. You got to get a group of people, get that block moving, and then you ride the block over, spin yourself around, and pull it down as more people are going up.
This is at least from my opinion, this is the funnest obstacle Tough Mudder has. It's just fun.
I love it. It's so much fun.
Now, it'll be cold, and so it might not be as fun as usual, like on a warm Sunday afternoon, but anyway, it'll be more fun than the next obstacle, Funky Monkey.
Oh, and that one is right after Block Ness as well. It's super close, isn't it?
Yeah. So what does that mean with Block Ness being so close to Funky Monkey? How will that affect it?
Are going to be completely wet. You won't have time to dry them at all. So the bars are going to be wet, which means grip is going to be super important here. That grip strength is super necessary because I just slip right off the bars whenever they're wet.
Now, Tough Mudder actually put out a little announcement about Funky Monkey. Let me read this.
Yes. It's different. That's right.
No more standard monkey bar climb up. Instead, you'll have variable handholds and grips to get across the water pit. Oh, yeah. And you might want to watch out for reverse holds and false grips. What do you think the difference will be going from monkey bars to, I don't even know what they mean. Like, if it's going to be like those baseball kind of holds or...
I don't even know. The picture looked like it was just different bars on funny angles attached to a piece of wood, but those pictures can be very misleading. But I'm interested to see how that turns out. I think it's going to be a lot harder because monkey bars are pretty straightforward. You just keep moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
Just you're going to need to shift and figure out where you need to place your hand next. It won't be quite as straight of a path.
After Funky Monkey is Death March. What do you think Death March will look like?
A giant hill or mountain. Just climb straight up.
It's usually like a terrain-based obstacle where they just find the biggest hill on the property and throw a sign at the bottom of it for you.
And they just make it into an obstacle because they love to do that to us.
How do you pace yourself up a giant hill like that? Is it better to just go slow the whole time, or do you run, take breaks? How do you approach that?
It depends on what the hill is like. If it's straight up and not really any elevation change throughout it, I'll just walk up. But if there's some flatter sections and I think I can run it, then I'll definitely jog through that bit and then walk once it gets steeper again.
What do you do?
So I need to see the hill before I make a decision. What do
you do if you have to run downhill? Like, how do you approach that to avoid injury and to keep, moving along?
I love running down hills. Like, I just barrel down those and just pray that I don't trip. But I'll go down those as fast as I possibly can and just trust my feet and my ankles to hold up.
The next obstacle is Everest. And they have a little statement on Everest. In 2018, you will see an added vertical wall to increase the already impressive height and difficulty of classic Everest. Want to skip the wall? Feel free, but you'll enjoy an added run penalty if you do. So it looks like Everest is going to be similar or maybe the same as Everest at World's Toughest this year with the 2.0 and the 2.1 version.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
How did you do Everest 2.1?
I did not attempt Everest 2.1. I have enough of a problem with Everest, but I think I might try it. And you just got to run, keep running, keep moving, and don't jump until you can't move forward anymore and just stay up straight.
It looks like a Ninja Warrior wall. It's really that high.
It does, yeah.
It's got a straight edge at the top like Ninja Warrior or like Everest 1.0 had. But it's high. It's another, 2 or 3 feet higher than Everest 2.0.
Yeah, if you slow down, then you're never going to make it up. And I know with Everest 2.0, there's times when I have trouble just getting to the top of that one if it's muddy or slippery or wet.
I wonder if they'll throw down ropes over 2.1.
I don't know.
I doubt it.
They
but
didn't. No, I don't think they will. Think they might. Do you think they'll have them on 2.0? Because they did at other toughest.
Yeah, at toughest last year, they had the 2.0 on half of it, and then the other half.
And then grappler on the other.
Exactly.
But it doesn't sound like they're doing that unless they're just going to throw it in.
And what was interesting is last year, no matter which side you made it up, you could continue without a penalty. It sounds like
just whatever.
It sounds like if you do 2.0 this year, there'll be a short penalty, and if you skip it all together, there'll be a longer penalty.
Yes, not so much a fan of that. I don't really like Everest because I need to depend on people for that. I've soloed it once, but it was a short Everest 2.0, and it was a downhill run to it. So you get that extra bit of speed.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I need people to catch me at the top and then drag me over.
The 14th obstacle is Kiss of Mud 2.0. What is Kiss of Mud?
It is basically a barbed wire crawl. And they usually find a nice rocky patch there or dig in lots of puddles for you. And you just got to stay low to stay under that barbed wire. Usually I can roll through that, which is a lot faster. But sometimes they have that barbed wire so close to the ground that you just got to army crawl through there.
It's important for all the obstacles, but I think especially for Kiss of Mud, just keep your mouth closed when you go through it.
Oh, yes. Definitely.
I don't know if you remember in Chicago, that was the foulest.
It was terrible.
I went through it and I was like, man, that left side was terrible. I'm going through on the right side next time. And the right side stunk just as bad. And people joke about like, oh yeah, I've never smelled bad obstacles that bad as in Kiss of Mud in Chicago last year.
It was so terrible. I remember that. Just awful.
The after Kiss of Mud is pork soda. Pork soda
I have no idea.
I don't either. It's a toughest exclusive obstacle. It's not going to be in Tough Mudder full or half. There's a little picture on the course map for each obstacle. The picture for pork soda, it looks like a vomiting whale. And I don't know if that's actually what it is, but that's what it looks like, at least, in the picture I have. So Tough Mudder has again, we have no idea. We've never seen, or never, at least it's never been called pork soda, whatever this obstacle is. If it's whale related, Tough Mudder has had an obstacle called the beached whale before.
Yeah.
Have you ever done that?
I have not. I've heard about it vaguely, but.
Do you know those blob things they have at summer camps where one kid sits on the end and then another kid jumps on the other end and sends the first kid? Yeah. It's one of those blob things, but it's horizontal in front of you and you have to go over it. And that's what they call beached whale. And sometimes there's ropes, sometimes there's cargo nets. But that's the only whale-related obstacle I can think of. And the only reason I'm saying the whale thing is because that logo looks like a vomiting whale. So so pork soda is going to be a surprise or a new one for us this year. It'll be fun.
Mm-hmm. Should be interesting.
After pork soda, whatever that is Berlin walls.
Nice high wall. Do you know what they're doing the T-bone version? They did that at other ones. Yeah, you know what? So last year, that was one of the toughest exclusives, was the T-bone wall, where basically there was a shelf coming off of the Berlin wall toward you. You know what? I guess they could do it either way. If there was going to be the T-bone wall, you'd think they would say T-boned or hero walls, they call them for a couple races. But I could see them going either way. You're right. But either way, you just got to get your hands up to the top and swing your leg up, hook that ankle, and pull yourself over.
And if this is your first Tough Mudder race, people are happy to help. There's always someone. Oh yeah. If you walk up and someone's standing there, they either need your help or they're waiting for you to help you. So don't be afraid to ask. I did a couple other race series after doing Tough Mudder, and we came to a wall, and I was like, someone was struggling, and so I went behind to push them up by their feet or whatever, and they freaked out on me, don't touch me. I was like, okay, sorry, I was just trying to help, didn't know. That's crazy. Anyway, yeah, people are happy to help. Yeah, always. They'll let you step all over them. After Berlin walls is cage crawl. Tell me about cage crawl.
I think they had that back in 2016. It's like water with this cage, this like grate over top. So you have just enough room for your face to stick out, and you gotta pull yourself through and swim through that with just enough room to get air, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, it's totally safe, but it feels very unsafe.
Yes.
And some people, I was reading on the board when the course map came out and they're talking about obstacles. Some people are not excited about this obstacle. Like, how some people feel about electroshock therapy or the cliff. They feel the same way about cage crawl. Like, they feel like they're going to die every time they do it.
I don't mind it. How
do you get through it? How do you mentally approach it?
So I go in with head first. So I do egg beater as I'm swimming through, and I'm pulling myself along the grate as well with my hands. And then I just go through there pretty quick.
So you're kicking your feet like a egg beater stroke to get through it?
Yeah.
I usually just pull myself along and just like let my feet hang behind me and let my arms do the work. But one thing I found, because I used to struggle with this mentally too. One thing I've found is if you can find the edge of one of those fence sections, there's there'll be a metal pole running all the way through straight, and if you can just keep your eyes like looking at that metal pole or your hands on that metal pole, you'll know
you're going straight.
Exactly, because the last thing you want to do is go like zigzag all the way through it.
Smash into everyone. Take twice the time.
One thing about cage crawl is it's going to be cold all night long.
Yeah,
and you're in the water. You're in the water for, I don't know, 30.
It's a pretty long swim.
Yeah. So that'll make it a lot tougher than usual.
Wetsuits are going to be a necessity for most people.
Oh yeah, if people show up without their wetsuits for this, that's not a good plan.
Yeah.
After cage crawl, 3 more obstacles. The next one is just the tip. Do you know?
I have never done that one.
It's similar to the Z wall in Spartan.
Okay, that's what I thought.
You're moving along a wall and you're hanging by the tips of your fingers, essentially. You may have a random foothold once in a while, but it's essentially hanging by the tips of your fingers.
That one should be interesting.
And that one, by the end of the course, either you got grip strength or you don't. So
yeah, it's a long race.
That'll probably be a penalty obstacle where you have a penalty option. The 19th obstacle is Kong. And it looks like Kong Infinity, but it says Kong. So I can't imagine they would have Kong out there and not Kong Infinity after, the big announcements for Kong Infinity. So I
think it's going to be Kong Infinity for sure.
Now, you did Kong Infinity at World's Toughest. What was your strategy for that?
One ring in front of the other and kept going. Don't slow down because you're gonna lose all your momentum. And just keep going until you get to those monkey bars.
Did you go straight forward or did you go backwards, side to side?
I went straight forward every time. I know other people were going sideways or backwards, but I just decided to keep it simple because that seemed to work for me.
Sure. After Kong Infinity, the last obstacle is Happy Ending with a toughest exclusive. They're calling it Happy Ending Slippery When Wet. And here's what Tough Mudder says. New in 2018 is the massive finisher obstacle Happy Ending presented by Merrill. You aren't getting the standard obstacle here. We added targeted water pumps to send a flood of water crashing down on your dome as you try to climb up. The higher you go, the tougher it gets. It sounds like they're trying to bring a little Augustus Gloop flavor to their new finisher obstacle.
I'm hoping they put ropes on that because otherwise I doubt people are going to be able to make it up by themselves.
You think they have to, right?
Yeah, for a toughest race, I would think they would be putting ropes on there. And if they don't, then that's going to be a problem.
And I can't imagine, I doubt, I can't imagine that it's going to have a penalty option either. Like, because you can...
No, you have to do it.
Right? Especially if it's the finisher obstacle, too. Like, Kong last year had a penalty option, so maybe that's not a good rule, but So yeah, and that's
if they don't have ropes, that's going to be a problem. That's all I can say.
So that's 20 obstacles. What are your thoughts on the course? The weather looks cold and the terrain looks hilly. What are your thoughts on the course overall?
It's going to be a tough one, but it's definitely going to be fun. It'll be the first event of the year, the first big event, so it'll have that mentality with it. But I'm going to go out there and try and get my 30 miles, see how that goes, and just have fun with it.
What do you wear as far as gear? We've talked about wetsuit a couple times. What do you wear as far as gloves, hood? How do you prepare clothing-wise?
So for World's Toughest, I had a 3 mil wetsuit, and that kept me pretty warm. I think it was the Vortex. And then I had my Bleg mitts, which are absolutely amazing. And hood, I just had a little neoprene cap and definitely a windbreaker. That was a lifesaver.
Talk about why that windbreaker is so important.
Because it's windy that whole time. When you're cold and wet, that wind will just cut right through you if you don't have anything to block it. And that can take you out of the game because it just aggravates everything.
The neoprene doesn't block wind as well as you think it would.
No, it does not. Not at all.
And then it's a little late now for anyone to buy Bleg mitts for Toughest Mudder West. But if you're going to another Toughest Mudder later in the year, talk about the Bleg mitts.
So Deanna Brasz invented them, and they're neoprene. I think you can get 1 mil or 2 mil or something like that. And then it's just like this mitten that goes over your hand. And then whenever you get to an obstacle, it's got a slit down the palm of it. So you can pull your hand right out. And then you don't need to worry about gloves on the obstacles, and your hands stay warm whenever you're running. You just put them right back in.
They're amazing.
No need to take off gloves.
They are amazing. I hope she makes $1 million off those things. They are a great.
Oh, she'll make so much.
Deanna, what do you do as far as nutrition? What kind of food, what kind of drinks? Do you like Tailwind, Gatorade? What do you do?
I like Scratch products. I don't know if you've heard of them.
I have some in my closet.
Okay. Yes, I love Scratch. That's what I used for pretty much all of Worlds. Their hydration mix. So that seems to agree with me really well. And their protein, their bars and their energy chews are great as well. And then I take my Beat Elite before the event. But my only main thing is I make sure I've got my Scratch products out there.
Do you like any real food out there with you? Is that a thing for you?
I take some real food, but not too much. I like dried apple slices. Those seem to work for me. But I'm still just figuring all of this out as I go too. So just seeing what works and what doesn't.
Last thing about
applesauce is good.
Applesauce?
Yes. I like applesauce. That
Just
seems to work too.
Kind of a comfort food, or is there some nutrition in there specifically that you like?
I don't know. I think it's easy for your body to digest. Before races in high school, I'd always have applesauce. So maybe that's part of it too.
Some of it is just like, if it works for you, it doesn't really matter why. Like, it works. Don't change it. How do you approach like the day of the race? Like, do you take a nap? What do you eat before the race? When do you eat it? What's like your last, 12 hours before the race look like?
Well, last year I would always run the tougher mudder in the morning and then do the toughest. So my day kind of got crunched together there, but I'd finish the tougher, try to get a bit of a nap in, and then like 4 hours before toughest, I'd get a good sized meal and just make sure I stay hydrated.
What do you eat? Do you eat like a regular meal, or do you try and get something carby?
I like pasta before races.
Even like 4 hours before the race?
Yeah, it's just my thing. It works for me. Chicken parm is delicious and I love it. But yeah, I don't know. I've never had a problem with pasta before a race. So that's what I do.
Do you think running tougher in the morning costs you any miles at night?
Oh, I'm sure it did. Like, I'd go into the race and I wasn't quite fresh. But I had fun. So that's all that matters. That's what I went in last year to do, just to have fun and figure out the ropes.
Deanna, your Instagram is full of pictures of you working out in the snow or working out on the beach. It looks like you've been pushing hard this off season. How do you feel coming into 2018?
I feel good. I feel a lot stronger than last year, even just at the end of last year. So I think it's going to be a good year. I'm excited to see what I can do. I'm just really excited for all this.
What are your plans? What are your goals for the race year?
I am terrible at making goals. I kind of just go in and do the best I can, but I'm going to keep running tougher, and I want to keep doing well at those. And if I can make top 5 at a toughest, that would be amazing. Definitely get 30 miles at one of those. And I really want 75 miles at World's Toughest. I want that silver bib.
Which toughest mutters are you planning to run this year?
I'm going to do LA this weekend, and then Boston and Michigan.
And then have you planned out your tougher mutter schedule?
Not too much. I'm pretty much just going to go to all the ones I can drive to. I'm in Southern Ontario, so lots of East Coast events.
Deanna, how can people find you on social media?
Just search Deanna Brasz. Nice and simple. Nothing crazy.
You seem to be more active on Instagram. Is that kind of your preferred platform?
Yes. Definitely post a lot more on Instagram. So if you want to see me running around in the snow, sometimes I post pictures of my miniature horse as well, or my other animals.
Tell me about that horse. What's the story there?
That's a funny story. So when I was in grade school, I guess it was, my friend owned this horse. And she kept her at our farm because I live on a fruit farm, and she lives in the subdivision. So she kept the horse there on our property. And then after a few years, she just gave her to me, and she's been living with us ever since. So I take her for walks, and she's just a giant dog pretty much.
Can you ride? You can't ride her.
I cannot, but my nieces and nephews could when they were younger.
Sure.
So yeah, she's basically up to my hips. She's pretty small. Like, she's the size of a big dog.
Deanna, do you have any sponsors or anything else you'd like to plug?
Yeah. So Merrill has been super supportive. They've provided me with a lot of gear, and they're super great. I'll be racing in their shoes definitely this year. I love the All Out Crush 2, which just came out recently. They're amazing. And then I'm part of Goat Tough. I'm one of the Goat Tough athletes. So Jim recruited me last year in Atlanta, and he's been amazing with providing me with gear and nutrition and stuff throughout, and just being a source of information. But those are my two, Merrill and Goat Tough.
Those All Out Crush 2s, I have a pair of them. They have a unique lacing system. What do you think about that?
Yes, the BOA. I love it. Probably one of my favorite things about the shoe. Just because you never have to worry about your laces coming untied, or it's super easy to take them on and off. I switched shoes at World's Toughest with those, and it was not a problem having to untie laces.
It's kind of hard to describe, but it's like a twist to tighten, pull up to untighten thing.
It's interesting, but I would definitely recommend them to anyone.
Deanna, do you have any last thoughts on World's Toughest Mudder or Toughest Mudder? Anything else?
I'd love everyone to go out there and just have fun and do their thing, run their best races possible, and have fun with it.
Deanna Brasz, thanks much.
Thank you.
Special thanks to Deanna Brasz for appearing in this episode. Well done. Good luck in LA this weekend. Who do you think will win in the elites? Ryan Atkins? Can Christopher Mendoza take him down? What about the women? Rea, Allison, Lindsay, Morgan? Other? Let me know. willhicks@gmail.com. Be sure to sign up to win some trail running shoes from Merrill and leave us a review on Apple Podcasts. I will see you in Los Angeles.